people need a geriatric care manager. I think everybody knows why. And as I said in our other session, our calls that come into Jewish Family, we are getting the calls primarily, from adult children out of state. Concerned doctors call us. We have attorneys calling us from out of state and whatnot. They've all already navigated the web and gotten a little bit of information on their own. They throw around some terminology and then they say, but I don't know what to do with it. And we need some help navigating this very complex system. So that's what we as geriatric care managers do. Ruth Rails being a nonprofit agency here in the community, we are certainly trying to meet the many needs of our seniors in South Florida here. We have a pretty comprehensive counseling program for people. We also have a grant to do caregiver counseling, and we find that we certainly do not want the spouses or the adult child, whoever, to burn out, and we're all familiar with burnout when we have to take care of someone who is failing and frail. So that's one of our many services. We have a wonderful volunteer department, and we utilize those volunteers in many ways through a telephone reassurance program, a friendly visitor program of volunteers visiting at home, as well as we have a large group of volunteers willing to drive seniors to doctor's appointments, to cemeteries so that they can visit a relative at the cemetery, to a myriad of places, because we know how limited transportation is here. We don't want those seniors driving with expired driving license. The ones who have their license, that's enough of a challenge on the road. But what I really wanted to talk about is we're finding that both the seniors and their families are saying to us, my mom, my dad want to stay at home. They do not want to leave their homes. We've offered them 100 times, come live near me in Wisconsin, come to Indiana, and they just don't want to pick up and leave Florida. And there are many reasons why they want to stay in Florida. But one of the programs that we found in this world of shrinking resources is through the Veterans Administration. There is a wonderful little-known program that's getting a little more known called the Aid and Attendance Pension Program. And miraculously, it is a program that has funds and has not been accessed widely by the population. It's getting more popular because the VA actually had to go out and advertise this program because nobody was using it. In order to qualify for this program, you just need to have served 1 day of service during a war period. And they outline, and I have something here for you if you want to pick it up at the end of the session, they outline when the periods of war are. So obviously for our World War II vets, we're talking between 1941 and 1946, 1 day of service.
Is it good for their spouses?
And it is good for their spouses, whether if the veteran was the husband, let's say, and he is deceased, the surviving spouse is eligible to access this. A divorced spouse is eligible to access this. And it is a difficult application process. I will not fool you and say it is an easy process. But the nice thing about this is from the date you put this application in, if you are approved maybe 7 to 9 months to a year later, it is a retroactive program. And also the lovely part of this program is that you get a lump sum of money. And you as the consumer decide how to use that money. If you have a spouse caring for you, that spouse to determine how your benefit is arrived at. And if you are going to be helping seniors to navigate this system, you tell them you want them to save every bill that they spend on any kind of an expense that can be considered medical. Let the VA knock it out as an expense, but you should have that receipt for that bill. Even if your out-of-town children are helping you pay for home care, that is considered an expense that gets applied to the income of the frail person and the spouse. So it can be children putting money into that system to keep the adults, the seniors in their home, and that is considered a legitimate medical expense and a health expense that is deducted from your income. So don't be fooled, and don't have your seniors be fooled by, oh, I'm over the income level. That number can be knocked down significantly. We've seen that number be knocked down to 0 based on how much the family is expending in healthcare expenses and they would qualify for the maximum benefit of, I think, a couple can get something like $1,800 a month to help pay for these expenses. So this is a wonderful program, and I've included the name of a social worker at the end of this printout here, who comes primarily to our libraries in Delray Beach, and I think he comes to the library in both. Is eligible for that money as the caregiver in the home. You have an outside caregiver that can be used to pay the outside caregiver bills. You want to have the infirm person go to daycare part of the time, it can pay for the daycare bill. So there is no strings attached to how this money is used once you are approved. There's a little bit of a complicated formula that I'm not going to go into. It's explained on the internet and in this printout as to how they calculate what your actual income is that's you. And he will set up appointments with people and keep meeting with them and helping them to negotiate this process. So please advise people to use it.
What I understand is that there is a certain amount of stipend for the VA aid attendants also in an assisted living facility.
That is correct.
And it can be also coordinated with Medicaid benefits. My experience has been for some folks that can't afford long-term care insurance or can't qualify for it, that in some cases the quality and the level of care is much better for them to be in an assisted living facility. And we have referred people to assistance to receive some of that care.
Absolutely.
And it does work, and it works well with the Medicaid and coordination.
It can be conjointly with other programs. Absolutely. It can be conjointly with long-term care. Yes. You know, many long-term care policies have a limit on a daily amount that they will pay. And you'll see that the family is paying the difference in terms of that daily amount. If they need live-in care and their benefit is $100 a day and the live-in care is $175, they're paying that additional $75 a day. This aid and attendant benefit can go to pay that $75 a day.
We all know that once upon a time in the late 1970s, the state of Florida was the leader in terms of providing for elderly residents in their state. At that time, the state legislature kind of was the benchmark for the rest of the country, not only because we were ahead of the curve in terms of number of seniors that needed some care, but also because the legislature in the late 70s was very aware of the fact that less than 3% of people ever want to leave their home, whether they need to or not. Most people prefer to stay in place and get support services to remain at home, which is many times the least the most cost-effective way is to stay home rather than leave the home. But at the state level, unfortunately, because of a variety of reasons, over the last decades, we have tried to balance our budget because we're having greater numbers of seniors moving into the state. They're staying here. They're older. They're frailer. And the ability for the state legislature to take care of that many seniors has really been compromised. And so about 10 years ago, the government went towards having to look at what the income level of seniors were, and if they were eligible for Medicaid, then it would relieve some of the state's burden, because if people qualify for Medicaid, they could now draw down Medicaid dollars for the same dollar that the state was spending. The problem is, as you well know, everyone doesn't qualify for Medicaid. They just don't. So you have a ton of families and seniors who have moved to Florida, who are here to stay, who now need access to services that are being cut every single time. And so I referenced you to one page. I'm going to give you the facts so that when you meet with families or you talk to people over the phone from out-of-state options, the first page you'll see is something called CCE, Community Care for the Elderly Program. And I just want you to look at those numbers for a second, because most legislators will say that they will consider continuing funding a program if the benefit is there for the cost that it takes to run the program. So I can tell you in the middle of the page, those are some of the different funding vehicles available to families in name only. First of all, you have community care for the elderly, which on average costs the state legislature about $4,600 a year. Medicaid age and disabled waiver, as you see, is $7,900. Alzheimer's Disease Initiative, which takes care of people either to go to a memory disorder clinic or to be able to access a daycare program or receive services at home, is about $8,300 per person a year. And then you've got our waiver programs, your nursing home diversion program at $21,000. All those community and home-based programs combined are still more than 3 times less than what it takes to put someone in a nursing home in the state of Florida. So the numbers kind of speak for themselves. It is the least expensive way to take care of people is in their own home. If you look down at the bottom of the page where the bullet item, I believe it's the 3rd one, it says the last significant statewide increase of the CCE program was in 1999. Now, I don't need to share with you that if you were trying to balance your home budget today based on the same income you had 10 years ago, you would find it really difficult to do with property taxes and insurances and healthcare costs and everything else. But today is your opportunity to take these numbers, understand what they mean. The state of Florida is no longer the paradise it used to be for retirees. It is very expensive to come to the state of Florida. And people have this false impression that if they qualify for Medicaid at home, they must qualify for the same kind of service when they move to Florida. Not the case. We've got more people in the Tri-County area 60 years and older than the entire population of the 7 smallest states of our country. That is a gigantic problem for our legislature to deal with. And you need to be able to be informed about what the real costs of our home and community-based services are so that you can tell families. Because when families are upset that they can't afford your services, they need to knock on the legislators' doors and hold them accountable. We elect people to office so that they can provide answers for us, they can provide actions, and be accountable. Now, we have a great example in Representative Schwartz, but she's one woman. We need everybody. I have a friend who did some market research with some of the bigger private founder and donation in South Florida, and she was really excited at the thought that if she shared this story, that they would be more agreeable to opening up funding opportunities for seniors to stay at home and use community-based services. But at the end of her research, what she was told is that that's government's problem. We're going to do other more creative things. Well, I'm here to tell you that just as we've always heard that it takes a village to raise a child, it takes an entire community to sustain a senior. And we're no longer taking care of people just in their 60s. It's 4 decades of the later part of life, which is the most expensive part. Okay? I was told as a young person coming out of high school that if I wanted to have a future, I should pick a career that either took care of seniors or took care of children. Taking care of seniors is really hard nowadays. Very, very hard. Because nobody intentionally fails to plan, but nobody thinks about contingency plans and the cost of those plans once the first health crisis arises. You all know this. Now you've got numbers to share with people. Because the state of Florida is the 4th most populous state in the country. We have resources here, and I cannot accept that we can't do a better job by our seniors. And when the legislature says that it has to cut the budget, I get it. But make it an equitable cut along all programs, not just the programs that don't have good representation. And I have a friend in Washington who is a lobbyist who said to me, we need to do the right thing. We need to be advocates, and this is your advocacy 101 today. So now with that, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's true that in the last session, and thank you, Howie, for putting this together. It sounds just a wonderful group of people who I guess it's preaching to the choir when we ask you to help out.